He's the right rev of speed, and he joins me every Monday at 1 p.m., usually Fridays at 1 too, but he won't be there this Friday. This Friday, Jerry's got to take a break, but it's Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com. You'll also hear him on Sirius XM. And what can I say? A dominating performance by Chase Elliott up at Watkins Glen, and not one without drama, because you had feuds coming out after the race. But I guess we should ask this. Not yesterday, but on Friday, I asked you, who were the great road course drivers? It used to be, and I mentioned Boris Said used to come in for the road courses in NASCAR, and then you wouldn't see him elsewhere. But did Chase Elliott, this is his second straight victory at Watkins Glen. He led 80 and 90 laps. Did he become, or earn the reputation maybe, as the top road course driver on the circuit now?
I wouldn't go so far as making the top road course leader, but he's certainly getting there. He certainly has improved tremendously, and winning back-to-back at Watkins is not a very easy feat, especially doing it in the dominating fashion that he did. But I'm very optimistic and very bullish on Chase Elliott going forward to be developing into one of the better road course drivers on the Cup circuit.
Well, you know what I was actually impressed by was the jump. Did you see this highlight? No, it wasn't exactly the generally going over a river or anything like that, but quite literally on that road course. We talked about the appeal of road course racing, and yes, there was a time where all four wheels ever so slightly all left the earth and came back down, a slight jump and all that. I can't remember ever seeing a jump unless it was like Jeff Gordon in a Pepsi ad or something like that. How commonplace is that in NASCAR, and how commonplace is that in road racing, Jerry?
Oh, it's very common in road course racing. You see that a lot. There have been one instance comes to my mind immediately. Clint Boyer did that at Sonoma. So it's not an unusual incident by any stretch of the imagination. But it just further adds to the excitement of road course racing. And as we talked on last week about road course racing, 12, 15 years ago, the concept seemed to be dying in NASCAR. There seemed to be a lot of people that wanted to get away from road course racing. And now it's hot. Very hot. The end of the last year at Charlotte Speedway. And now there's talk about maybe having the way Poconos may have the back-to-back weekend next year, have two races on the same weekend. Now there's talk that maybe Watkins Glen may want to add a race and have back-to-back races on the same weekend. There's other tracks, including Sonoma, that may be investigating that as well, too. So, right now, road course racing is very hot, and I think that you're going to continue to see that trend where we're going to see. I'd be willing to bet we're going to see at least one, maybe two more road course races in the schedule in the next couple of years. The question is, what tracks do you take a race away from?
Yeah.
Add a road course. That's going to be the key.
But like I said, I thought that this added something. I mentioned how, you have a wreck on a road course, and you're kind of, the car oftentimes isn't destroyed. It's just sort of off the path, and you get back on, and all this. And I like that aspect as well, I suppose, because you still had, in my opinion, the banging that you love about stock car racing. You just didn't have, let's say, oh my goodness, I hope he's not hurt. And I understand, we've all seen, wrecks that are just, exciting to watch, if you will, if we can take Schadenfreude from the driver. So, but, we're not talking about doing away with tracks or anything like it. I just thought it was an appeal. And boy, there were plenty of feuds going on back and forth, but I also hear a lot of support. Let's talk a little bit about, Bubba Wallace and Kurt Busch had an argument after the race and all that. What can you tell us about that?
Well, there's a lot of irony in that, Marky, because remember, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about this, remember that Kyle Busch gave Bubba Wallace his first real big break in the sport. He hired Bubba to race full-time in the Truck Series in 2013 and 2014. Up to that point, I think Bubba had only
Mm-hmm.
And he, that frustration, I think, kind of boiled over yesterday, but to me, it was almost like a necessary boiling over. By that, I mean, Bubba wanted to prove to everybody he is not going to be pushed around. I don't care if you're Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., whomever the case may be. He wanted to prove that just because his cars and his finishes have not been equal to many of his competitors, that's not a reason for him to be pushed around. And Kyle Busch after the race yesterday, he had virtually nothing to say about it to reporters, while Bubba went on to release rant too as well. So it's good to see Bubba stand up for himself, and I think that at the same time we're also going to see a new rivalry being created here between Bubba and Kyle.
It is kind of interesting, as you mentioned, the added aspect of possibly, is he biting the hand that feeds you? But from what I've read online and the comments that I've seen online are basically, boy, we're just glad somebody called out Bush. And the idea was, boy, there's somebody who's kind of a whiner and all that. Is Bush kind of an outsider in your opinion? I mean, it always seemed like, Jeff Gordon, when he started and all that, was the outsider of NASCAR. Do you see a similarity there?
I actually think that ship has sailed quite a few years.
Okay. I will say that I haven't seen a whole lot. Now, another old tiger, young tiger, and all that. The Jimmy Johnson, Ryan Blaney feud, if you will. Talking about, the contact. Johnson finished 19th. He did pick up ground for the playoffs and such. But your thoughts there? I mean, did you think Jimmy Johnson had did you think that he had a legitimate beef with the contact of Ryan Blaney during the race? Yeah.
I know several of my colleagues at NBC Sports, we were talking about this yesterday after it happened, and all of us were kind of surprised at Jimmy's choice of words. I mean, in fact, one of my colleagues clearly said that this did not sound like Jimmy Johnson that we knew. I mean, he was, rather, I don't want to say aggressive, but he was more out there with a comment about another driver. He is. He's usually pretty fair and, even keel and right down the middle, but he's a little bit more on the adversarial side in terms of, blaming Ryan Blaney and in essence also making a little bit of fun about him, because the way he said about how Ryan was shaking and he was nervous and, talking to him and that kind of thing, it's like, that just didn't seem like Jimmy Johnson. But I mean, I understand the heat of the frustration of the heat of the moment, that kind of thing. But again, we may be seeing the start of a new rivalry there as well. I mean, Jimmy Johnson, earlier in his career, he had run-ins with several drivers, including Kurt Busch. So, not going to be surprised to see these incidents from yesterday continue on going forward.
I think there are two ways to look at this. I mean, Jeff Birchfield, John City Press, has always said that he enjoyed Jimmy Johnson, thought that, he really enjoyed covering him and that he was very gracious to reporters and such, and he was very appreciative of Johnson's personality. But, Johnson, and one of the things, I guess, that he's sort of like the quiet champion, if you will, is that he didn't have that sort of personality after winning all those championships that, say, an Earnhardt did, or even someone like Cale Yarborough, who could do guest spots on TV. In other words, he was a little bit, maybe not that exciting of a personality. Does this actually give him that element, or does it just sort of look like, boy, you're in such a losing streak and such sour grapes? What is your take on that?
I wouldn't say sour grapes, but I would say, it is kind of a reflection of frustration to be experiencing. I mean, what is he now, at 80? 81, I think, or 82 races now that he has not won. He hasn't won since the 13th race of the 2017 season. Longest winless streak of his career. And, those things, they will eat at you, and they have to eat at more so even on a guy who's a 7-time champion. He's used to winning races and used to winning championships. And he's won neither since 2017 as far as races, and he's not won a championship. this was just maybe a reflection of that. And, I think Jimmy, in hindsight, maybe he might have chosen his words differently, but, it's understandable why he would say some of that stuff. It was an emotional reaction. It was a heat of the moment reaction. And I think that he and Ryan will talk again, and they'll get things smoothed over, and they'll go forward. Now, as far as, like I said, with Kyle Busch and Bubba Wallace, whole different ballgame there.
Yeah, I will only say that, with Jimmy Johnson, I guess he does run the risk of, sounding like cranky old loser or something. But, I do kind of like the comment. I like the personality. If you get what I'm saying with that, I just hope that he can back it up. And I guess then my last question is, I look at the race and I look at the final standings, and there's Erik Jones up there in the top 5 again, this time on a road course. Still hasn't won, but you just get this idea that he can be a factor in the playoffs. And I normally don't say that. You know me, I don't like 16 drivers in the playoffs. I think that's too many. So my question would be, would an old tiger like Jimmy Johnson, assuming he could get in there, but yet he's Jimmy Johnson, he's a name, or would an Erik Jones who just is just there on the cusp, who do you think could be a more significant factor in the playoffs, Jerry Bonkowski?
I'm telling you, if he keeps on going the way he's going, Erik Jones,
yeah,
a lot of people in the playoffs. And, the interesting thing about yesterday, Marky, may have gotten kind of lost in the shuffle, but, Erik Jones and Christopher Bell are essentially going, not literally going head-to-head, but they're in contention for that 4th spot on Joe Gibbs Racing for next year. Now, if one of them is not going to wind up having that role, one of them is going to probably be moved to a satellite team, which more than likely would be Levine Family Racing, and that's where Matt DiBenedetto is at. And right now, he's doing very well as well, too. I mean, he had his 4th top 10 in the last 7 races. He finished 6th yesterday. So, and there's a movement around, a moving or growing movement at Levine Family, and then that adds another element on what happens to either Christopher Bell or Erik Jones going forward. So, this whole silly season is really taking on a mind of its own, or a world of its own, if you will. And I'm going to be curious to see, once the chips fall, who winds up where. I mean, I hate to see Matt DiBenedetto lose his ride. I hate to see Erik Jones lose his ride. I hate to see Christopher Bell get shuffled around, but, this is a business, and we'll find out. I think that you're going to see some kind of a clarity, very quickly. And, the other thing, too, real quick, I know we're getting up against the timeline here, but, Erik Jones, with the performance he's done lately, why hasn't he been signed by Joe Gibbs Racing? I mean, what are they waiting for? I mean,
yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what to do with Christopher Bell, but, this guy is doing everything and anything he can, and he's going above and beyond the call of duty to show he belongs in that team. I mean, if he wins another race, then that should lock things in, but until then, why hasn't that contract been signed?
Yeah, I mean, all I can think of is financial. I mean, could there be a few down there that we don't know about? I don't know that, but you can make a good point. I mean, yeah, it does seem that Jones is a real up-and-comer in all this. By the way, also, first time that Jimmy Johnson was running with his new crew chief, Cliff Daniels, and you mentioned last Monday the possibility of there being a new crew chief for Jimmy Johnson. So kudos to Jerry Bonkowski. That's why we have him.
Wait. But also, who did I pick to win the race yesterday, too?
There you go. You had Chase Elliott?
Yes, sir.
There you go. Man, we got to go through. This is why we have Jerry Bonkowski on, my friend. I gotta admit, I was sort of like, okay, Jerry, we just go on and all that. I had forgotten to write that down and make a mental note. Thank you for reminding me. My goodness.
I'll never let you forget it. I'll never let you live it down.
I think you have a point. You have every right to do so right there. All right. I used to say you want to buy a house, bet against the Detroit Tigers. Now we have Jerry Bonkowski. Okay, a warning. Somebody once took my advice on a football game. I didn't say they should, but they lost $2,000 on it. So maybe you shouldn't necessarily go that far. For entertainment purposes only, but he is always entertaining. Jerry Bonkowski, read him, NBCSports.com. Also, conversation about the hot rods, too, on the drag circuit, as well as listening to him here every Monday. Won't be on Friday, but Friday's usually at 1, as well as Sirius. Tri-City Sports Now. I got to tell you about this Brady contract. I think there's a hidden message there and a hidden lesson I'm going to tell you about after this.
To the meeting, run after